Piet Viljoen always ends up the week for us by pulling together all the strands. Good to be talking with you, Piet, and look forward to seeing you next week in the Drakensberg. It's amazing. It's 6 months already that the last BizNews investment conference was held, and yet it feels like it could be years given what's happened in the country in those 6 months.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun. I got to say, every day is interesting. Every day throws something new at you, and that's what makes investment markets and the reporting on those so interesting. So, and I do look forward to next week's conference, seeing everybody in person, which is nice.
Well, one of the people you're going to be meeting for the first time is a guy I've got to know pretty well, Alec Hogg. He's an extraordinary human being. He was raised by activist parents in a mud hut in Masinga, which is even today the poorest municipality in South Africa, surrounded by books, though. So he got to learn. His father, who was an activist, who was murdered, incidentally, by the locals, got him to read. And Gigi has applied this unique background into understanding, in particular, the informal sector, or what he calls the kasi or lokasi economy. And he was saying that the unemployment figures that we get from Stats SA don't reflect the reality in the world, because if you go into the kasi economy, you realize that there's massive unreported trade and economics that's going on. I just wondered whether you had any thoughts on that, given that I know you're a fan of transaction capital, which is one of the biggest beneficiaries, if you like, of the kasi economy, and then perhaps other stocks that might benefit from this blind spot that so many South Africans have.
Yeah, so I think Gigi is quite right when he says that unemployment is not 40%. I think unemployment is less. The kasi economy is big. The only problem, of course, is it's quite inefficient. Productivity in that part of the economy is quite low. So, for good economic growth, you need not only a number of people employed increasing, but also their productivity increasing. That gives you good growth. And I think the productivity in the kasi economy is probably lower than it might be in the formal economy, but it exists, it's there, and it's significant. So there's no doubt about that. In terms of the beneficiaries, I think the lower end retailers and wholesalers, like the Shoprites of the world, and I think Pick n Pay with Boxer, those sort of guys, I think the wholesalers supply a lot of product into that market, which gets sold in the so-called kasi economy. So I think those are big benefits, and you can see it in the numbers, with the growth rates exceeding economic growth rates, and I think it's because of that part of the economy that they supply.
It's an interesting story, and one that we're going to be paying a lot more attention to, because in this time in South Africa, there's so much doom and gloom. And when you hear an unemployment rate of 45%, just logically, you'd think that there would be long queues of people standing on the side of the road asking for jobs. But that isn't the case. I was mentioning to him yesterday that if you go to the robots up here, you will see people at the robots begging, but when you speak to them, they're Zimbabweans, who've primarily Zimbabweans anyway.
Yeah, and homeless, there's around. I think you'll see that a lot. So I think there are problems. I mean, one shouldn't pretend as if there are no problems, but I do think it might not be as big as a 40% problem, but it's still a significant problem to be addressed and is not being addressed. So I don't think one should negate the problem. There is definitely, despite the strong and thriving the kasi economy, and despite whatever else is going on, there is a problem, and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, he puts the unemployment rate, the true unemployment rate, around 15%, but I guess that's a conjecture. Someone who is not inclined to conjecture is Magnus Haystack. He'll also be at the conference next week. And Magnus had a full go yesterday at Old Mutual and others who predict and forecast. And what got his goat was he'd pulled out information that he'd kept one side from 3 years ago, when Old Mutual was on the my apologies, I'm the one who should be switching off my phone.
Speaking of which, I better do the same.
Yeah, but he said that Old Mutual had raised a lot of money from investors by forecasting that South Africa would be the best performing stock market in the world, and he said it hasn't been. And these people should be taken to task. And really, what he said was that the financial services industry is not a gentleman's game. People do strange things there. I know you've come against or come up against the marketing machines quite often. And how do you compete against that? When I remember you telling me once about you can't afford, or you don't think it's a good investment to have these huge billboard adverts at airports, as an example.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, so it's true. It's 100% true. The big investment institutions, if one can call them that, are marketing machines, and the best of marketing is to give clients a sense of comfort, a sense of security. And the best way to do that is by making cost or prognostication about the future, and then the client good hands happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the markets. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the world, politics, markets, economies. Nobody knows anything about it. But the marketing people will tell you, and people like that, and they have that, and therefore there's a good marketing practice. If that is your practice, it is good marketing practice.
Where do they get it from? Surely the people in the investment division must say to them, we think that X, Y, and Z, and perhaps it just gets overblown in the telling.
Well, I think you'll find that the incentives in institutions are mainly driven by the assets under management, the size of assets under management. So everybody's on board with that. You know, if the marketing people are growing with assets under management, the investment people earn more money, so they're aligned with that, and they will happily give the marketing people their about what is going to happen.
And I suppose the lesson about all of that is just to be skeptical when you see people suggesting what the future is.
As always in investing, it's always buyer beware, be skeptical, be questioning at all times, and don't accept forecasts on face value because they are not paper written on.
Yeah, but something I'd love you to give a little forecast on, because it just does seem so obvious right now, is on what's going to happen to these vaccine manufacturers. The whole world is saying whether you're taking a vaccine or not, and we've both had COVID, so we'll put that to one side. But it appears now that the momentum for vaccinations is just overwhelming. Johnson & Johnson has come out this morning by saying that it thinks a booster shot's a good idea 6 months after the previous vaccine, when J&J was only supposed to have one vaccine, but now its tests are showing it's going to be 9 times more effective. The Biden administration is saying we want vaccine shots 6 months after the last one for COVID. Whatever else you think about this, if you just focus on the fact, one other point was that Pfizer are raising their prices by between 15 and 20% of the vaccines. So whatever else you think about the morals or the ethics about vaccination, you've got to see these guys are in a very strong position, the people certainly at the moment who are making vaccines. And I suppose you can also relay that back to South Africa, where Aspen will be making the J&J vaccine.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Aspen is manufacturing the vaccine under license from whoever came up with the formula for. So yes, I think it's true the pharmaceutical companies will make money out of this. I'm not sure they'll make tons of money because I think up to now the price has been kept quite low to curry favor with governments worldwide, I guess. But they will have pricing power in the future, as you mentioned. They're putting up prices now. But having said that, over time, the pharmaceutical companies spent a lot of money on R&D, and they have come up with lots of things that have. And if you look at health, the number of babies born healthy and those sort of things, human health has improved dramatically over the past 100 years, and a great part of that improvement has come from the health or drug companies who have spent a lot of money to develop drugs with high efficacy. So if they make money out of this, I think it's a good thing. I mean, been developed in record time. They're not effective, but they seem to be doing something positive. So I'm all for people making money by solving problems for other people, and the vaccine solves a problem for a lot of people. Make money out of that. I think that's how the world should work, and it should work like that way more often.
But is it worth buying the shares now, the Moderna shares, the Pfizer shares, the J&J shares, and here in South Africa, the Aspen shares?
Yeah. Look, I think those share prices, the market is a pretty good discounter of what's going to happen in the future. That's why making predictions is such a poor time to try and come up with predictions, because the market is very smart. I mean, it's hard to outpredict the market. The market knows that its collective wisdom has seen what's happening with vaccines. It sees what it's doing, how much they're investing in that, and it's priced that into it by and large. Where you want to make money in you have a differential correct view based on underlying, and where maybe sentiment has gotten out of hand, either positively or negatively. And I don't think that's the case with the drug companies at this point in time. So I think they're pretty well priced. I don't think they're priced to make outsized investments. Probably okay. I don't think it's a huge opportunity there.
Just to close off with, there were results out this morning from Italtile, which was spectacular. Justin Rowe Roberts will be talking later in the program with the CEO, Jan Potgieter. But something that struck me, and it'll be interesting to consider for South African companies coming out of the pandemic, is he opened his commentary to the results, that Potgieter, with this quote. He said, "Over the past year, our group emerged from single-minded survival mode to a profound sense of gratitude for our numerous blessings amid the challenges that we face in South Africa." It's quite a statement, especially for a CEO reporting financial results. Does that, and well, their numbers are really good, so I guess he's very grateful that they are good. But is that something that we can look forward to being reflected across the board for companies?
I think companies that I'm involved with went through a really, really last year, starting with the lockdown in March, April, and the management of those teams have and the employees, suppliers, everybody's gone through super tough times over the past 8 years. And when you come out with results like Italtile today, which are fantastic set of results, I think it's appropriate to be thankful for after the past 18 months and being in a healthy position after the past 18 months. So yes, I think it's quite appropriate. And I know many management teams who feel exactly the same way.
And capitalism works like that, doesn't it? That you have these shocks, and then the strong tend to get stronger and the weak get shaken out.
That's right. That is how capitalism works. It is survival of the fittest. It's what you do when times are, which stands you in good stead when times turn tough. And that's, when things are going well, the thing is they're probably going to go less well. And when things are going less well, at the time they're probably going to go better to a certain degree. So, and I think one needs to prepare yourself for the tough times during the good times, and like Italtile have historically done that very, very well.
And other ones like recent reporting from Wilson Bailey, which is in our BizNews portfolio. I was very happy to see those numbers. They've come through the very tough times in construction seemingly stronger.
They have. They've pulled through. They didn't need to raise more capital or anything, which I think is always a good sign of a management team in a business that has prepared itself for inevitable downturns. If they don't need to raise capital during those downturns, that they've prepared themselves well.